Let me just welcome everyone here to the sauna, better known as the community market. If you were here in May, you remember it was 95 degrees in May on a day when it should have been about 80 to 85 at the most, and it was 95 that day. When we scheduled it in here, I assumed mid-September. Potentially it'd be 80 to 85 and a cool, crisp day in the evening. But no, I believe it got to 90 degrees. So, and I think I said in May, and Ralph, you must have forgot this, that it was part of your contract to control the weather for these presentations. So if you want to blame anybody, it's Ralph. So we'll let him take responsibility for that. Just a couple housekeeping issues. There's restrooms in the back. There's a water fountain in the back as well. And it sometimes can be cooler if you feel like you're having a moment you need to get cool, I guess. It can be a little bit cooler over here next to the larger doors that are open. There sometimes can be a breeze flowing through. So for whatever it's worth, hope that helps. That might be where I'm staying in the bulk of the conversation too. But this is the final presentation from Ralph and BBP and Allison Platt. We had a meeting in May, and we had 95 plus people show up, which I was pleased about. We had a webinar, which we had 30 plus live views, and then the website that we've had 1,400 plus visits. So we've had a lot of activity on our website to look at what's going on, to review plans. That's a positive thing. And at the last public meeting that we held at Galileo, where it was air conditioning, we had 110, at least 110, I'd say, plus on that. So we had a good attendance there as well. Again, so we've had comments been submitted online. We've had a lot of good views, a lot of good comments, a lot of constructive comments. And I want to make sure that you are aware that this is not the end of the process. This is just the beginning. At this point, Ralph and Allison kind of turn over to us in a couple of days, I guess, a final product that we will have and we'll review. And we still want to receive comments. The website will still be up. Staff is still available to talk to by phone, by visit. I think we want to be open to any conversations that folks want to have. So I want to remind you of that. And also, too, that we are partners in this. Danville, the Regional Foundation sponsored the grant to have this undertaken. The city's taken the responsibility of contracting with the consultants and kind of shepherding the project through. But we want to be partners in this with residents and visitors alike. So we want to make sure that is understood, and we'll continue to be open for this process. This is not the ending. This is only the beginning of what we hope, and I think all of you here that are present, is a positive thing for the River District. There are, I believe, still in your seats, some of the comment cards. I have extras in the back. There's just a few simple questions. What would you like the city to do? What would you like to see other organizations to do? And what are you willing to do to make the River District a positive event, to make the River District work? I also have a box here, and then 2 boxes located in the back. I have some pencils as well. If you don't have a pen or a pencil, please, I would encourage you to take the time to fill this out. If you want to take some with you, I've got some extra back in the back. If you want to think about it and then turn them back in, please do. If you want to pass them out, please, we're open for comments as well. There will be, we'll discuss this at the end as well, but again, as a comment as well, that this is not over. We're planning to have kind of a community forum in November to give all parties, all stakeholders a chance to kind of digest what we've seen, think about what it is that we can do to, again, make this a positive experience and a positive place and a positive district for Danville. So we'll be holding a forum, I believe, in November. We'll put out more on that, and we'll invite you here, or I believe it'll be at the Pepsi building, where we'll probably need to have some heat. How ironic is that? But we'll let you know about that event coming up too. With that, I'll turn it back over to Ralph and Allison, and we'll see what the final presentation looks like. Thanks again for coming.
Can everyone hear me in the back? Okay, great. Well, good evening. We'd like to go through kind of a summary of things that we worked on over the last several months. We're not going to go into all the details that were presented, for example, though, on the market and some land use assessments, et cetera. We're just going to keep the process moving through the three public meetings into this final presentation. As you probably have figured out by now, if you've been a participant, our firm, which is the lead firm in this, does the economics and redevelopment type work as part of this strategy. Allison and her firm does more of the design and planning. So you'll hear from both of us about our respective thoughts in both of those areas. Hopefully we have brought all that together in a nice tight presentation so you can understand what our recommendations are and where we'd like to see things go from here. So with that, just to go back over, if you have not been a participant in all the other sessions, the first meeting we had a bunch of reviews of existing work others have done, and we held a bunch of stakeholder interviews. We developed this strategy of how many times we're going to meet and what we're going to talk about. We developed a land use analysis and map of the River District, went through a bunch of demographics, which is information about households and businesses, their incomes, their age. That's what demographics means. And then identified those selection criteria, because one of our main goals here is to identify projects that we think can be implemented over the next 4 to 7 years. We call those catalytic projects. In the second public meeting, we went through our market assessments, where we took a look at the office market, the hotel market, residential market, all the different types of markets in the area, and made some identifiers on that. We then applied that selection criteria and identified the projects themselves, did some urban design work around those projects to show what could be done in the public spaces around these projects to enhance those opportunities. We ran numbers, which is what a financial pro forma is. It's the same thing a developer would do. He'd sit there, he or she would figure out what the revenues are, what the costs are, what kind of money is going to be left, what kind of return I'd get. So we did that kind of work on those 4 projects. And we also then did economic impact work for the city to say, well, how many jobs is this effort going to generate? How much in taxes? What kind of benefits can the community see if these 4 projects are implemented? So that's what's happened. And then finally in the webinar, which I thought went very well, highly successful, slew of questions, and we've answered, I think, most of those questions. We went through our final design. We produced the rendering, which you'll see in a few moments, that is kind of going to be on the cover of a marketing brochure for the River District, which we have finished. And it identifies both what we call Phase 1, which is the first 4 to 7 years, and Phase 2, which is thereafter. Those projects we think ought to happen. And so we kind of put them in 2 groups. Do these now, do these later. We went through a number of implementation strategies, and you'll hear about possible funding sources from both public and private as well in this particular presentation coming up. So to go right into it, we identified 4 catalytic projects in Phase 1, which should be in the next 4 to 7 years. 2 of them are shown up here. The Dan River R&D building on Main Street we think can go into office and mixed use. The RJR building at Bridge Street into office. The Smith Seed building into some apartments. And the Pemberton Penn building on Bridge into a hotel right over here. These are 4 projects that would need support in the public areas around them, and that's what Phase 1 catalytic projects are about. Go to the next slide, please. And the civic improvements that would go around those. As you can see, there's other sites as well in the downtown. Along Main Street, certain improvements. And you all know about the Downtowner and a recommendation on that, and we'll talk about that more in a minute because I know that's been in the news. Phase 2 catalytic projects could be the White Mill, and that building is surprisingly ready for development. We took a long tour of it, very clean inside, ready to go, and there's some users thinking about parts of it. It's just so much space. Of course, River City Towers is a very unique opportunity there for perhaps lodging and some meeting space, hopefully air conditioned so you guys don't have to sit outside. The fire station and the power station, smaller projects that also might be good catalytic endeavors in the next phase. Other projects along the first block of Main, the Cedar Works building, the Belk Leggett building, and possibly the post office over time. It depends on what happens inside of there. But these are all projects we identified that might happen after the first wave of projects. Those project civic improvements that would go around those projects, we've talked about, and Allison may get into some more detail about the Riverfront Park and about the stream park, the stream that can come right through. It's covered up in some areas over on in the River District and can be opened back up and create a linear park. So we've identified all those in other studies that we've done and turned into the city, all the details about those. So we're trying to just stay at 5,000 feet here and give you a flavor for what the final thing is. To implement these projects, we hope to see the city continue to leverage all of its available financial incentives. And locally, there's really a pretty good tool chest already, and that includes your tax abatement program, your enhancement grants, the IDA's participation, and enterprise zone incentives. So there are local incentives that to help some of these projects along. At the state level, there's an even larger chest of tools, and that could be the tax credits, which we talked a lot about at the last public meeting number 2. The Commonwealth Transportation Board enhancement grants, VDOT programs, particularly down at the knuckle, we call it, the confluence down near the River Park. Industrial Revitalization Fund, and of course the Tobacco Commission has a very large bevy of programs which are still accessible for cities that have older textile-related buildings. At the federal level, there's a companion program for tax credits. They have another one called New Market Tax Credits, which is a very interesting program that allows private developers and others and companies really to buy tax credits, and that money can go into rehabbing buildings and then rural business enterprise grants. So there's a whole bevy of tools that we think can be used. You also, just on its own, have other things going on in the district that we think you ought to leverage. And those are some key institutional, business, and cultural assets, with Averett coming into the area, downtown, with the Regional Medical Center, the high-tech businesses that you've already attracted right over here on a couple blocks from the building, and then a number of other amenities. So again, find a way to connect. The promotion and marketing, we developed this brochure that you see at the bottom. The cover has the design that we put together, the sketch, and inside is phase 1. You open it up and there's the projects, both public and private, I just went over a minute ago, and then on the back the phase 2 projects to give people a flavor. So that brochure would be reproduced into dozens of copies, made available to developers, to property owners, to investors, to lenders. It could go into underwriting packages for projects. It could go in with grant applications. It's to show in one place how the city of Danville wants to move out and cause revitalization in its river district. We also work with the city on what is it that you're willing to do financially for this area. And I think these 3 bullets summarize it pretty well. That is, the city should commit at least $10 million of its own funds over the next 5 years to improve the river district and leverage investments by others. So we think part of this strategy has to be put your money where your mouth is and have a solid base of financial continued support from the public sector. And we've talked to them, and we're all on the same page about the $10 million over the next 5 years. Over that 5 years, it would find itself in what we call a capital improvements plan. And that would encourage redevelopment, improve the district's amenities and connections and walkability, all the design things you've heard Allison talk about on many occasions. And finally, we think right up front the city should use its cash reserves to undertake about $4.1 million of Phase 1 improvements on Main Street. We've had some separate cost engineers run numbers on the knuckle and that area that we want to improve, and we think that is the amount of money that would be needed to move ahead and have the city make a statement about what it intends to do. It's going to come out up front and do these kind of things. Hopefully we'll have private sector rather, coming right along, but the city understands that the business of redevelopment at times involves seeding and then continued commitment. So that the people that are saying, well, okay, that's great, is this a one-shot deal, or is the city really in this for a while? They'll see, well, 4.1 now, 10 million over 5 years. So there is a commitment from the city as part of this strategy to incent private developers to really move out. So with that, I'd like to turn it over to Allison. We're going to share the podium in a minute on a couple of other matters. When Allison's finished, we'll entertain all your questions and see what we can do to help everybody understand everything we're talking about.
Thank you, Ralph. Everybody hear all right? Good. Okay. When we started looking at this, it seemed like the big splash would be created with 100% corner, or as Ralph referred to it, the knuckle. But the reality of it is that that's going to be a little longer to accomplish, and the reason is because VDOT is involved, and that permissions and so on take a little while for them to hand out. So the thought was that that should happen as soon as it can, but that one of the first things to be done should be Main Street. And there's another really compelling reason to do Main Street first, which is that in my experience of urban design, if you improve the streetscape environment, that tends to get people to want to invest in the stores and the buildings that are right there on the streetscape. So that's a great place to start. It will help stimulate investment, and it will also create a pedestrian-friendly environment, which will encourage people not just to go visit this store or that store, but perhaps to come for an afternoon or for an evening and park their car wherever they park it, and it's going to be so pleasant and shady that they'll be happy to walk around and not just go to the place that they originally thought of, but perhaps look at a few others as well. Next. This is the plan, and we'll kind of go through it in pieces. That's the overall plan. Next. There's an important note that I want to, that was the plan, okay? It's very important to understand what that plan represents and what it means, because I think there's often a lot of misunderstanding about what the whole urban design plan, master planning process is about. Basically, what we're trying to look at is, in the big scheme of things, how to make what you have here already work better. It tries to highlight circulation that could be improved, and which, it says if you improve these streets first, and if you improve this area next to it first, that the sort of synergy that you create by doing that at the same time is going to get you more than the cost of what you're doing. So that if you improve the streetscape, you're going to get more businesses, as we said. So that's the kind of way that you like to think about it. It's not just let's make it pretty, it's let's make it work better so that people want to be there. The other issue it's important to understand that what we show as the designs for these parks and streets are just concepts. They're, I'm going to show you a streetscape cross-section for Main Street that shows, wider sidewalks and trees. Well, that's all it shows is wider sidewalks and trees. And as far as what the design will actually look like, what the dimensions will actually be, what the materials will be, that's yet to be decided. And it's something that should be decided with all the stakeholders as partners in the process. So it's important to understand that these are placeholders, these designs, so that until the community agrees on the actual designs that they want. And that's what a master plan is. It's never going to look the way the master plan is drawn. It could change over time. There could be a big opportunity that appears after we finish the plan that changes things. But it does give you a vision and a direction so that you can get started and move in the right way and have the economic pieces in place so that you can get the funds. What it's going to look like is, as I said, is yet to be decided. Remember that plans will be modified as circumstances change and opportunities arise. And in that regard, I wanted to address directly a couple of things that have come up in the last few weeks. And the first thing I'd like to say is that it seems that there are a lot of people who are very passionate about how this plan should proceed. And that's the best news that we could possibly get, because it means that people care about their downtown. How they express it, different people are going to have different ideas about how it should be done. And that's good. That's democracy. I think that the important part of that whole dialogue is that it is a dialogue, and from my point of view, I've been doing this for many, many years, and one of the most important things about going about this process is it has to be done with civility, and it has to be done with the understanding that everybody wants the same basic thing. They may disagree about particular goals, but it's important to give people credit for wanting to do the right thing and work it out, as opposed to assume bad faith. There's a couple of issues that have arisen. One of them is the issue about Lou's Antiques, and I'd just like to address that directly. In designing that space and recommending that that building be removed, there's two issues there. One is the building, and one is the business. Regarding the business, any business that's downtown that's successful is a good thing, and everyone in downtown should support successful businesses and help them to grow. And, you know, I'm not familiar with all the businesses that are downtown. That's not my purview. But if it's a successful business, then it belongs in the downtown if it wants to be there. And there's no more to be said about it than that. On the other hand, there's the building. And if you go look at that building, it's not a very attractive building, nor is it a building that fits with the rest of the historic downtown. So where does that lead you? It does not lead you to say that Lou's Antiques should go somewhere else tomorrow. In fact, Lou's Antiques shouldn't go anywhere until they want to go somewhere else. However, at some point, because buildings and businesses are not inextricably together, this business may decide to go somewhere else, or people may retire, or they may expand and need more space, whatever it would be. But somewhere down the road, it would be nice if that unattractive building was replaced with a building that was attractive. And that's what the plan was saying. And I've done many plans where we made that observation, and years later, the building was up for sale and vacant, and it was acquired, and a park was created, or whatever was created, and that's a good thing, because they remembered initially that that was something that could be improved. But as I said, there's no commentary on the businesses, because every viable business in the downtown, the whole purpose of this plan is to keep the viable businesses and get more. So
there's a second project we've heard about some reaction to, and that's the Davis Storage. We've had conversations, of course, with the city and interested parties on the private side about that. Our plan doesn't really address Davis Storage. You didn't see it up there as a catalytic project or phase 1, phase 2. However, it's in the news. People are talking about it. Our reaction to that is as follows. The city and the property owners should work together to figure out what is the best use. As David said at the very beginning, this is the beginning of the process, not the end. We are only recommending a strategy that we think will work. That strategy is going to be remolded and reshaped by the discussions that start taking place tonight and down the road and at the forum. Nobody here is trying to run a business out of the River District. You heard what Allison said. What we're trying to do is figure out a way to improve the River District. Now, some people say, well, all they're trying to do is run us out and make it look pretty. That is not the case. What we're trying to do is suggest that if successful businesses can come in, these are the locations that might spur other people to make those investment decisions around them, and then a ripple effect starts to take place. You throw a rock in a pond over there and throw a rock in a pond over there, those ripples start to get closer and closer, and that's the whole idea behind the catalytic project. So whatever goes on at Davis Storage, there's two axioms that we want to make sure are part of those discussions. The first axiom is you don't create a hole in the fabric of downtown by knocking down a building. If there's a way to keep the facade up and still accommodate some additional parking in there, that might be the best of all worlds. I don't know the integrity of the walls. I don't know if they're going to fall down if somebody touches them. So those are things that are all details that our plan doesn't even begin to address. And those are the kind of things that need to be addressed in this further civil dialogue we hope that takes place. And the second axiom is it could very well be that a public use there could actually enhance the private financial feasibility of those buildings around and near it. And I think property owners should always think about that, because if the private property owner's not only got to find the dough to fix the building up, but then pay for parking where he really doesn't make any money on parking, it's just a way to get tenants in the building, and you take that cost away and you put it on the public side and make that parking available, your pro forma as an investor has greatly improved. So there's advantages to working together. Things like design, things like ultimate knocking down a wall or whatever are details that can be worked out. Our plan doesn't even start to talk about those. Allison would like to comment on a third one that we've heard about in the last few days.
And that would be the downtowner. I understand that some people would really like it to be parking, and I have heard this off and on for a long time. And I actually considered whether it could be parking when I looked at the plan. The issue with that particular site is that it's quite small, and it's also very hilly. So putting parking in there, the only way to put parking because of the change in grade going down Union Street would be to do a deck of some kind. And that would be, I think, prohibitively expensive given the size of the property. You'd have so much space that you were paying for in terms of circulation around it that the cost per space would be higher than would be practical for anybody to build, privately or publicly. Given that, I mean, I guess the other thing that it could be would be surface parking. And as an urban designer, I would recommend against that for this reason. That is another really, really important intersection along Main Street. You know, we talked about the 100% corner. Well, this is an additional really important cross-section because that's where Union Street crosses Main Street. And on one end of Union Street, you have a subsidiary retail area, which is very important and needs to be sort of tied into Main Street so that people would feel comfortable walking there. And of course, on the other end, you have City Hall. So that's a really important cross-section. And it's usually a big mistake to have a big hole in an important intersection, that is a surface parking lot, because there'd be, you know, there's already other surface parking lots next to it all the way to the bank. So if it were just surface parking, you'd basically have most of a block being cars. And as far as parking goes, from a design point of view, and you know, design has to balance the needs of merchants and people driving and so on and so forth. But parking generally wants to go behind buildings or between buildings so that it's a pleasant place for people to walk. And I think that intersection would not be a good place to put a surface parking lot. On the other hand, I also think that there's lots of parking very close to Main Street. A lot of it is inaccessible because it's what I call balkanized. It's like little parking spaces here and there, all owned by individual buildings or property owners, and they all say, you can't park here, you can't park here, this is mine. And so if you go behind Main Street on the other side of the block, it's all owned by a bunch of different people, and it's mostly all empty most of the time. So there are ways to figure out how to make parking more shared. Everybody gains, and the businesses have the parking that they need, and if you have residences upstairs, they can use that parking at night, and so on and so forth. Parking is always an issue. Merchants are always worried about convenient parking, but in the many towns where I've worked that have succeeded, if you create an attraction of your downtown, then people are willing to park a little further away and walk because it's a pleasant walk. So that's my philosophy about it. Next. So highlights of the plan are that Main Street, Bridge Street, and Craghead are priority pedestrian streets. And what I mean by pedestrian streets are they're the streets that should have the highest level of finish. They should look beautiful, they should have shade trees, they should have benches and amenities, trash cans, attractive pavement, so that people like to walk there because that's where most of the action is going to be. Bridge Street is already that way and it just needs a little bit of an enhancement. The 100% corner we've already talked about, and we'll have some images of that. The creation of a river gateway park at the 100% corner, I think, is a very, very important goal for your community because that's the one place where everything meets, or most things meet, and everything in the river district meets. It's where Main Street the Tobacco Warehouse District and the river all come together. So that would be a fabulous place for a park because you could have events there that would be central and would be right near the restaurants, so it would be great, and the shops, so it would be great for the merchants. An easy walk, you could go to an event or a concert and then go have dinner before or after, or go shopping or whatever it would be. Patton and Spring Street then become what we call vehicular access. They still should have sidewalks and so on and so forth, and trees if there's room for them. But they'll basically be the streets where you access parking and then walk to Main Street. We'll talk about possible locations for future parking structures. And there is a need for public space upgrades. That would be parks, parking, trees, crosswalks, and landscaping. Next. Here's Main Street, and this is that corner where the downtowner is. And you can see this is City Hall, and this is the Union Street commercial area. And making this an attractive cross street that's friendly for pedestrians would encourage people to walk more and use their cars less. Next. This is a little cross-section that we did to show what it looks like now. This is what it looks like now. Basically, you have fairly narrow walks. They're about 10 feet. And you have a 3-lane cross-section. But if access to parking is encouraged on Patton, which would become 2 ways, by the way, and Spring Street, then you don't need a 3-lane cross-section, and you can use that extra lane to add more width to the sidewalks to allow things like sidewalk dining and benches and things like that that would be really wonderful. You can also plant bigger trees because you have more room. And you don't lose any parking because the parking that was there is still there. And in fact, you may gain a little bit because you lose these bump outs. Next. These are just some images of, the kind of spaces that we're talking about that are really attractive for people to hang out in. Next. And then this is the Union Street and Downtowner site intersection there. This is just a concept. I did it in a day or so just to show how the space might be used if it was going to be a park. And like this, for instance, is a wall here that might have glass block in it that would allow light through, but that would block views to the parking lot that's next door. And this is a close-up of it. One of the things that you could do because of the change in grade here is there's that existing building that's going to remain right here. And I don't know that the second story of that building is used, but it would be possible to create a restaurant in that second level that you would access from the level of the park. So you could have tables out there, and you could have somebody who would be watching the park because they'd have a restaurant there. And you'd have a place to go get coffee or dinner or whatever it might be. And a central water feature. You always have to have that, right? Next. And that's just some views of the kind of thing we're talking about. Next. And then this is the sketch that we did, and this shows the downtown park with this little gallery that we talked about in the plan last time I was here, with a little water feature, and this water feature here would sort of mimic the rapids as it came down that slope, with a central water feature that would be lit and about 30 feet high so that it would be visible any direction you were coming into that square, including from across the bridge. And one thing that we're showing here that is that this bridge, you should consider lighting those 2 bridges, with architectural lighting. So it would really make it very dramatic, and it would look terrific at night, and it would probably just enhance this area here where the fountain is. Next. So in this area, the thing that's changing is that there's a new connection that's been added through here. The connection that goes catty corner across this area in front of Lou's and Jake's and the salon here is removed. And instead, there's a big wide walk there. And what that does is visually, when you come down here, you see this inviting walk that's taking you to Bridge Street. And there's also some connections on the sidewalks here to get to Patton and Craghead Street. So this becomes a block instead of the way it is now. Now, it's, as a person who doesn't live here, it's very confusing to go through that intersection. Even all the times I've been here, I usually get hip to the way things work and how circulation works pretty quick, but I turned the wrong way on this intersection tonight twice because it's just confusing. So this would make it very clear. And for instance, if you got up here and realized that you didn't want to go across the bridge, you could turn left and come back around. And that's actually a good thing because as I told some of you, if you're here at the first meeting, I got down here the first day and I didn't know where I was going, so I went right across the bridge and then I couldn't figure out how to get back. That's not a good thing when you're trying to bring people downtown. Next. we talked about this. Next. As part of the park here, some people had expressed a real interest in having a splash park for the kids. So this is what this is right here. There's parking here in the park, which would also be good for handicap access. And we have a splash park right next to it, and it could do a couple of things. It would be great for the kids, and of course, if you're coming there with your kids, you can park right in the parking lot, and you don't have far to go to get to the splash park. So they can enjoy the water because, you know, the river's kind of dangerous, so especially for small children. But the other thing that I added here that I thought would be kind of nice is here are the hiking and biking trails here. There's a little loop here where you could get off and walk through on with your bike, and it would have misting arches so that if an adult could go through and get cool on a hot day too. Always a good thing. Another little feature that we've added here is that we're showing a concession building that would have restrooms, which are necessary, of course, and it would also perhaps have a rental facility on the lower level, because this is two levels because of the change in grade here. The lower level would rent kayaks and bicycles so that you could enjoy it if you were just visiting. And then the upper level, this shows a deck and maybe a little restaurant or a snack bar or something. So if you come in from a long walk, you can have a cool drink and sit out on here, because really this building here on Main Street and this area also has one of the most spectacular views of the river. So that would be a very popular spot, I think. And of course, this is a space that could be an amphitheater, but it would be grassed instead of hard. So even if nothing was happening, it would be pleasant to sit there and just kind of look at the river and hang out. And then you could have concerts and so on here. And then this shows a long pier going out here. It would probably have a covered pavilion at the end, so you could go out and really feel like you are right on the river. Well, you would be right on the river. And also have a kayak launching area. Next. And that's calling all that stuff out. Next. So this just, this is supposed to be a seat wall here. If you were coming from this direction, you'd see a little semicircular wall. Just look like a seat wall. Maybe it would be 2.5 feet tall at the most. Might have the name of the park, whatever that is. And then on the back side, there would be water pouring out from it, like it does over the dams in the river. And then it would fall into a basin there with rocks on the edge, and then fall down with steps on both sides, and then go into a more stream-like natural setting, and then into a little pool where it would be pumped up to the beginning again. And then we are showing a continuation of the riverfront walkway here, so that if you're on, right now there's no connection underneath the bridge there, so that you don't have that continuous walkway, and we're suggesting that connection should be made. And that's it. Next. And this is just some images of what it would hopefully look like. This is where the water would pour out, and where it would come down with steps on either side, and where it would be more quiet. Next. And as far as this goes, there's some images of what it might look like. The concept for it, it's a little hard to see in here, but we were suggesting that it be a series of waves along the top that might be stainless steel or something like it, that would also include light tubes in colors of white and blue. Because if you're up here in this intersection, because of the change in grade, you can't really see the river right now. And I'm not even sure when they take the trees out if you'll be able to see the river until you get to this point here. So basically, by having this wave action pergola, you're sort of announcing this way to the river. And then once you get to that little area that's sort of semi-covered there, then the view to the river opens up, which I think would be quite dramatic. Next. And then two more prosaic things, but also very important. Parking. There is many places in the downtown where parking structures could go. It doesn't make any sense right now to build parking garages because you don't yet have the demand, but hopefully very soon you will. And so it's good to think ahead, to think where that might be. And one of the sort of no-brainer places to me is this area here behind Main Street. You know, here's the intersection of Main Street and Union. This is a place here where you could fit a very large parking garage. I mean, one that would probably take care of all the needs for the City Hall and for downtown for a long time to come. But in the meantime, you could consolidate this parking so that it would work better and so that it would be available for people to park in. Also, this block right here, which is behind where the school board building is, that block is almost completely empty. And that's actually, when things start to really get going here and on Main Street, this would be a great location for a parking garage because it's empty now. So, next. Oh, and thinking about a parking authority might be a good way to go, to get an agency together that would work with owners to consolidate parking and make it available. It is further in the future, but the design needs to be considered because you've all seen really ugly parking garages. They seem to be, it seems to be the one structure that's often ugly. It doesn't need to be, though. It can be very attractive. And if you look at the next slide, these are some examples. This is a parking garage here. This is in Stanton, Virginia. And they actually do have storefronts in a couple of places on this garage. But you wouldn't, I had to do kind of a double take to figure out that it was a parking garage. And it's not so much more to do it like this. These are not actually windows. They're grates with chain link in them, but you can't see the chain link, so it looks just like a window. And then this is in Raleigh, and it fits in really nicely the way they've designed it with the buildings on either side. And you'll notice that it's set into the center of the block. So that's a place where parking garages should go. Next. Other streetscapes include Bridge Street from Main to Wilson, Ridge Street, which is sort of access to downtown type road, and we'll look at it as sort of a typical road of its kind, and also Wilson Street, which used to, of course, carry a lot more traffic when the bridge was there, but now that the bridge is gone, it needs to fill a different function. Next. As we said, these streets here are the main pedestrian streets, Craghead, Bridge, and Main. But Ridge here, which is shown in blue, and Wilson, which is shown in blue, are very important streets for getting around downtown if you want to avoid traffic or whatever. So looking at them is important too. Next. Bridge Street is already quite attractive from Wilson to the east. I'm a little dyslexic with direction. But from this building here where this little park is and access to the river walk to here is not quite finished yet. And since some of the early projects include these two buildings, I think it would be really important to improve these streetscapes so that they match the rest of Bridge Street. And of course, we're also adding this short block here, which will be more part of this, but nevertheless should belong. And we're showing a little plaza here in front of the fire station, suggesting that it might become a restaurant in the future. Actually, many fire stations are turned into restaurants, and they're great restaurants because they have really high ceilings, and you can change out the doors for all glass that can move up when it's nice outside and so on. So that would be a really nice use for that building. Next. It would add street trees and improve sidewalks, widen the sidewalks if possible, although the cross-section of those roads is pretty narrow, so you'd have to see about that. And it would match the existing. Next. Craghead Street is a very important street. Right now there isn't a lot of development on Craghead, but there will be. I'm confident that there will be. The buildings along Craghead are really beautiful. And right now it's used sort of as a commuter shortcut. And my recommendation would be that we discourage it from being a commuter shortcut and make it into a more pedestrian-friendly road. Next. Probably because there isn't a lot of development right now at this end of Craghead, a logical place to start may be where the Science Center is, the crossing at the Dan, because that's already a big regional attraction. And I think there's a need to consider the area across from the Science Center there where the rail yards are. They're not going to go away. You can't, railroads don't do anything they don't want to. So, and they're not going to move from there. But you could put in a screen so that it would be much more attractive. Eventually, I think that railroad bridge coming in, a trestle, well, it's not a trestle, it's a bridge, but will become an important gateway. So you could start at the gateway there, improve the crossing at the Dan, and then after that, improve parts of Craghead as development proceeds. Next. And this is a little cross-section of what Craghead could look like. The suggestion would be that, like on Bridge Street, you consider, if the cobblestones are still under there, that you consider leaving them and exposing them, because one thing that cobblestones do is they slow down traffic. So if people are in a hurry and they want to commute, they're not likely to choose this street to commute on, and that's actually a good thing. You know, we're showing much more attractive sidewalks. So there's some really great little storefronts there. There's already the bicycle shop that's there, and I think there's other small enough storefronts that you could encourage other uses they need, like a lunch place or a dinner place, because, you know, Averett's right there. So those kind of services are going to be in demand. So it would be a great business opportunity for someone. Next. Ridge Street is the final street I wanted to discuss, and I put that picture in there because it kind of says it all. You know, you wouldn't really want to have a small business on this street because it's not very attractive. But, and really, it carries more traffic, or it has the capacity to carry more traffic than it's ever going to carry, because it just ends. I think the plan was originally to have it go through somewhere, but it's not going to do that. So how do you make it more attractive? The bike lane should remain, and we'll change the cross-section. I'll show you what that is next. So this would be the suggested cross-section. Basically what you would do is from a 4-lane cross-section, you would basically make a center median with left turn lanes, you know, sort of dividing the block. So it would be, you have plenty of capacity for left turn lanes, but you also get a 10-foot median that allows you to put in trees and shrubs and, you know, perennials, annuals, whatever, so to make it really, really attractive. And I think that's going to make a big difference to how people use this. It will become a really nice gateway to the city instead of a place that people avoid. The bike lanes remain in both directions also. Oh, there is one more street. Next. And the last one is Wilson Street. The street is way too wide for the capacity it has now, and so the question becomes how to make it, use it better. There is bike lanes on it, and of course you always want to save your bike lanes if you can. They're a great feature of your city, and you want to, you know, save them and expand them. But the problem is that, you know, one of the things that you want to do on your main streets is bury the utility lines. But whether you know it or not, burying utility lines is the biggest expense in improving the streetscape. It's prohibitive. It's sometimes, you know, if your plan was to bury all your electrical lines downtown, you might never do anything else and spend tens of millions of dollars. So you don't want to do that. So I tried to come up with a solution that addresses having above-ground utilities and still makes it a pleasant pedestrian street. Next. And this is what I came up with. This particular street, Wilson, the right side of the street is almost always in shadow all day long because of the way the sun is. The sun's down here, you know, shining in this direction. So because of that, what I did is I made this street quite narrow, and I put all the utility poles on that side, and there's room for head-in parking, which would maximize the parking on that road. And on the other side, there's a wide sidewalk and shade trees and a two-way bike lane. So all the amenities go to the sunny side, and all the utilities go to the shady side. And that way you can accomplish something good without having to bury the electrical lines and make it impossible to consider for a long time. Next. Okay, so priorities. We talked about Main Street and the Downtowner Park being early on. Bridge Street from Patton to Wilson needs to be done as these projects come online, so that'll be important. It's already mostly done, though. It won't be a major thing to do that. The 100% corner would be important to do as soon as you can to sort of set the stage. That's just, you know, making the circulation work and so on. That's really all you have to do in the short term. Eventually, the Riverfront Park, but that's going to be a big project. Any project like that's going to, you know, cost a lot. So probably that's something you need to start planning for right away, and, you know, maybe have a fundraiser, maybe have a corporate naming opportunity for some big sponsor or something to help pay for it. You know, in many communities where I've worked, they have, you can buy a tree or buy a brick or buy whatever to help make it happen, and people usually respond really well to that. We did that at Union Point Park on the river in New Bern, and as soon as it opened, you know, people had their names, and they could get bigger family plaques and so on. As soon as it opened, everybody was down there looking for their bricks and looking for their plaques, and they still, you know, when company comes, they take them down and show them. And actually, I have one down there, too. And every time I walk around the park, I stop and look. So then, lighting the bridges might be something that you could also do short-term. I tried to find out for this meeting tonight what the cost would be to light the bridges, but I wasn't able to get a price, but I'll convey that as soon as I do, because I think that would be a great sort of out-of-the-gates exciting thing to do. Next. Daylighting the stream. We didn't talk too much about that, but we talked about that in previous meetings. I think that's a great project. You could start it now by getting school kids to look into the history and understand about ecology, maybe identify an ecologist who could help explain what would need to be done to make that stream work again. It is above ground in places, but in other places it's not, so you need to start planning and looking at that, and then you can just kind of do it as funds become available. Selective clearing and landscape enhancement also needs to be done along the river. There's a lot of non-native species, a lot of vines, and probably a lot of places where you want to open up views to the river from behind. So that kind of evaluation can be done right now. It doesn't cost a lot of money, and you can get people to volunteer to start clearing that out and look at how the water drains in there and make sure it does it in an ecologically sound way, that sort of thing. Other streetscapes, as and when funds allow, or to help stimulate development projects can also be done. Next. And then as far as that's the end of the presentation, and I think, David, did you want to have a few more words before we have questions?
I just wanted to take the opportunity while we had this many people here to talk about what we have done in the River District in this area, and then I was going to turn it over to Joe. I want Joe to say a few words too, but thanks to Ralph and Allison for, how many months has it been now? Since 5 months? So just wanted to, again, just to highlight, because I've had conversations with people and people have said, we're already doing a lot down here, we being the city, not just the organization, but there's a lot going on. But just to talk about what the city has done, the transfer facility at 515 Spring Street was done 2 years ago. That facility is a beautiful facility. There's been a lot of improvement done on Spring Street. We actually are going to rehab 522 Spring Street, which is right across the street, so we're doing some improvements to that lot. She talked about some underground utilities. We've done some work for doing some underground cabling. We're actually going to, I think this evening we were doing some work on Spring Street as well. So we're looking into the areas of that. It is expensive, but where we've found some ways where it made sense, we're already doing that. The new fire station, which we're looking to do, that'll be a tremendous benefit to the River District. And on a police note, while I have this many people here, the River District is a safe place to be. We have looked at the crime statistics. For those of you who live down here and work down here, I don't have to tell you that. But for the cameras that are rolling, and for those of you that are visitors, this is a safe district. I won't put anybody on the spot, so I won't name any names, but his title is the Chief of Police. But, I've had conversations with him. He's had his staff looking at the stats, looking at the crime data. This is a pretty safe place to be if you want to come and live, work, and play in the city of Danville. So I just want to say that. Have I said it enough? This is a safe place to be. Public Works has done some clearing already on the river in between the two Main Street bridges. They've done some work to our building, the municipal building, to the courts building. We had a 9/11 event. They cleaned up the outside of the courts building. They've done some work. We've got some investments going into our building. We've also done some projects here with LifeBat and Luna. So we've done some improvements to some structures down here. Economic development. LifeBat is a newer announcement, 5 jobs. Noblest, which is a big announcement, huge announcement, $2.5 million capital investment in this district, 15 jobs. The Farrell Building has been a big plus for Main Street, Jake's on Main, 316 Chibo, Adams Shoe Shop. I could go on and on. I'm sure, like I've won an award, I'm going to leave off my grandma when I thank everybody. But Draw Art Gallery, the Danvillian Gallery, the bike shop, Barry Copland has a place going in on Union Street as well. So there are things going on. So again, while I have a captive audience, we've done some work. Obviously, don't need to say it too much, but I think some of you have seen with Averett. You've heard a lot going on with Averett. The Denver Regional Foundation has been moving in there. The former Diamond headquarters is a big project. It's going to bring a lot of activity to this district, to the Bridge Street area. The atrium building, we have a nice cabinet, kitchen, gift shop going in there. So there are things going on. I think there's some positive things happening in this district. In this area where we sit, the crossing at the Dan, we've done close to $500,000 worth of improvements to this parking lot. I think for those of you who were here 12 years ago can see a big difference. We've done some improvements to this. The community market, just this year, just a unique thing, we started accepting EBT cards. So that opens up fresh produce for a different audience that might not have been able to purchase fresh, locally grown produce. So I think that's a positive thing, inclusive for everybody in this community. We put up a new information kiosk right over there. It's kind of hard to see it in the dark. You can get information on bus routes. You can get information on rentals of these facilities. It's an informative way where you don't have to come find a staff person. It's a positive thing for this district. We reboarded the trestle crossing right behind here. The Carrington Pavilion had some electrical upgrades, some redesign of the stage. We've done some improvements there. The Danville Market, community market, weekly gets about 600 to 1,000 patrons every Saturday that come through this building. If you come down here on a Saturday, you know that there's a lot going on. There's a lot happening here. I won't try to list all the events that happen at the crossing of the Dan, 4th of July celebration, Christmas activities, Easter egg hunts. There's a lot that goes on, a lot of concerts, a lot of festivals, lots of eating. Seems to be a lot of eating going on in this building. The Riverwalk Trail, which is a beautiful asset, 8.5 miles worth of a Riverwalk Trail that you can access from 3 points in this river district. This season alone, we saw about 18,000 patrons come through the farmers market. The Eco Counter, let me back up to the trail. In May, we counted 1,700 pedestrians go across the bridge. That's just this bridge alone. So this trail gets a lot of traffic. Annual visits to this district, to this facility, to this complex is over 70,000 people. There's a lot going on down here, and I want to try to emphasize that as much as I can. It's safe, and there's a lot to do. We're looking to enhance what we do offer down here, maybe looking at some new music activities we can offer, some movie nights, some different offerings to offer to the community to, again, make it more inclusive. So we're looking for that. Be on the lookout for that. Again, we have the website. We'll take input. The library has done some tremendous work on the outside. We've had some grants from the Danville Regional Foundation for some improvements to the outside and landscaping of the library. So again, lots happen. A lot is going to continue to happen. This is just the beginning. This is not the end of the process. So excuse me, and I apologize for talking so much, but I did want to put in one shameless plug for the River District Festival, which is October 8th, correct? All day, right here. The River District Festival, October 8th. Wendy, raise your hand. I'll put you on the spot. Any questions afterwards, come see Wendy. Be on the lookout for that. I think that'll be a great event for this community as well. So with that, he signs my paycheck, so I'm going to turn it over to Joe King. Joe, if you want to say a few words.
I want to thank very much the Danville Regional Foundation. They took a real interest, their board did, Carl Stauber and his staff did, on the issue of downtown. And we rebranded this the River District because we really want to think in a bigger footprint, not just the traditional downtown, but the Tobacco Warehouse District, the downtown, and immediately adjacent areas. So we're calling this the River District. And the foundation took the city council on a field trip to Greenville, South Carolina, and spent a very good trip there talking to people who had made long-term investments in that area. If many of you know, Greenville had a similar history of textile-dependent economy and transition into something pretty spectacular. But they were very, very convinced that doing something in the equivalent of their river district, they have a little tiny river flowing through their city, whereas we have a grand river, made all the difference in the world. So we came back inspired. The Regional Foundation provided a grant that allowed us to do this study. So we thank the Regional Foundation for caring about Danville, the region, and the River District. I want to thank the design team, and their job, as far as this phase is over, is pretty much done, but we wrote a contract in a way that allows them to continue working with us, and they will continue working with us as we go forward. This project had an advisory committee and a steering committee that were satisfied to take sort of a behind-the-scenes position to help sort of shepherd this thing along. But I think everybody wants to know what happens next. And at a near-term city council meeting, we're bringing the team back to give a formal presentation to the city council. We've had a number of very active city council members. Larry Campbell's there, John Gilstrap, Alonzo Jones. I know Gary Miller's here, Fred Shanks. Several council members have taken this to heart, but they need to hear this in a formal way. And it's no secret we have budget challenges in Danville, so making this kind of investment over a prolonged period of time is going to have to find a place in the overall budget, and it has to be somehow figured out. We're up to the task, I think. On the 10th of November, and we'll publicize this, it's my intent that we have a public meeting in the Pepsi building right across the parking lot, and we announce what the city's next steps will be. And some of those next steps will be as quickly as possible in this current fiscal year, and some will be planned in the next fiscal year, and then reference was made to a long-term capital improvements plan, so this will be incorporated in that. But on the 10th of November, we hope to be able to announce what the next steps are as far as the city is concerned. And believe me, we're very modest in how we see the city and the role it plays. It is not the only mover and shaker here. There are buildings that are owned by private individuals, that are businesses that are run by private individuals. There are institutions in the downtown. There are residents in the downtown, and they have a lot to say about what happens in the River District. The city is, however, the owner of the streets, the sidewalks, the curbs, the gutters, the parks, this facility, and has a huge and very important role to play. So we think we owe it to the community to announce what we think the next steps will be. And between now and November 10th, we'll be asking for as much input as you care to give to help us shape those ideas. And finally, before I turn the floor over to Carl Stauber, I want to thank David Parrish. David has been the organizer of this project. He's put a lot of time and energy, and you can tell he's passionate about it. So we thank David and all the city staff folks that have worked on this. And I'd like for Carl to say a few words, and then he can turn it back to the consultants.
Thank you. I'm Carl Stauber. I'm the president and CEO of the Danville Regional Foundation. At DRF, we have a pretty basic belief. If the River District does not prosper, this region does not prosper. You can look at place after place around the country that have succeeded over a 10 to 20 year period, and this is a 10 to 20 year journey, that have succeeded over a 10 to 20 year period in turning themselves around. Nobody from Richmond's going to turn this place around. Nobody from Washington, D.C. is going to turn this place around. It's going to be people here who are going to turn this place around. And unless the River District turns around, unless it becomes the bright spot the way that Joe talked about Greenville. I visited Greenville in 1968 as a high school student, and there was open heroin use on Main Street in places where there are now very high-end stores. Didn't happen overnight, took lots of investments, took lots of hard work. I'm amazed at what's happened in the last couple of years in the River District. This gives us a plan to work from. This is not the plan, it's a starting place. I encourage you all to join us, to join the city, to join the Danville Regional Foundation in making investments in the River District. I encourage you to take the bottom part of the card the most seriously. It's not about what the city should do. It's not about what just DRF should do. It's also about what you're willing to do. Because if you're not willing to invest, don't expect anybody else to. DRF will be an investor in the River District. We will continue to play a role in the River District, and we're happy to say we now live in the River District. Thank you.